Hello again, I'm Audie Jake, and welcome back to Autistic Reviews, the series in which I review media featuring autistic characters on the basis of how good it is representation-wise. And now a word from us autistic people. That's right, today we're going to be taking a look at the Autism episode of PBS's Arthur. The episode is titled When George Met Cara, and is the 6th episode of the 13th season. It premiered on April 5th, 2010. The episode is about how George, one of Arthur's classmates, becomes friends with an autistic kid named Cara. Interesting fact, the main character Arthur plays almost no role in this episode. Does When George Meet Cara have a simple message that comes from the heart? Let's find out. The episode starts off with George and Cara together in the bedroom. George shows Cara a picture of a lion that he drew, and Cara responds by info-dumping about lions. When George explains that he was actually asking what he thinks of his drawing, Cara responds, "It's brown, I hate brown." Then George shows off a picture of a train that Cara drew, which leads to Cara going on a long info dump about trains. George, speaking to the audience, says, "Once you get Cara talking about trains, it can be hard to get him to stop." Then George goes into his closet, takes out a puzzle piece which he calls the missing piece that started it all, and starts to tell the story of how he met Cara. The rest of the story from this point is told in the form of a flashback. George is in some sort of workshop class when he is asked to go to another classroom to retrieve some glue. While there, he notices Cara putting together a puzzle of a train. They have a brief conversation in which Cara takes something George says literally, and George misinterprets it as Cara joking. Later on, George discovers that he accidentally took a piece of Cara's puzzle piece and decides to give it back to him the next day. When he meets Cara, he decides to show him his ventriloquist dummy, which scares Cara, which leads to him having a meltdown. Cara's mother then explains to George that Cara is autistic, though the specific word the show uses is Asperger's syndrome. George later consults with Brain, another character, about what happened. Brain tells him that he has an uncle who is autistic, which is pretty cool in my opinion, and I'm glad they added that detail. He then explains that autistic people's brains work differently through the use of an analogy. Later on, George meets Cara once again and is able to give him back his missing puzzle piece. Now let's talk positives. The episode has a lot of details that I really like. I really like the way Cara's info-dumping of his special interest is shown. It's never painted as a negative thing by the other characters. In fact, George seems to enjoy hearing what Cara has to say about his special interests. And there are instances of Cara taking things literally that I like seeing. For instance, when George says they should hang out sometime, Cara confusedly asks, "Hang out of what?" The meltdown scene was also really well done in my opinion. When the meltdown happens, Cara retreats to a corner, starts rocking back and forth, and starts groaning. Also, I love that when describing autism, Brain says, "What's normal to us can seem really strange to him." I also really love how they emphasize that both the allistic and autistic child learned something from the friendship. George says that he taught Cara to say, "Nice to meet you," and that Cara taught him to speak quietly, be clear, and not to take it personally if he ignores him. This is one of my favorite lines in the episode. I love how they put emphasis on George learning how to better accommodate him, and that you can change your style of communication. I especially love the emphasis on being clear when you speak. It can avoid so many miscommunications when you just say what you mean. And I have to give props to the episode for actually giving examples of things that can be done to better accommodate autistic people. I can see this scene in particular actually helping a child who has an autistic friend. Also, I was worried that Cara was just going to be a one-off character, but according to his wiki page, he also appears in a bunch of later episodes, so that's really cool. My favorite part of the episode has to be the analogy the Brain uses to describe autism. Honestly, it's one of my favorite autism analogies that I've ever heard. It goes, imagine you've crash landed on an alien planet. It looks like Earth, but there are a lot of differences. For one, a lot of people seem to talk really loudly, and even though you speak the same language, you sometimes have a hard time understanding what they mean. And things that seem hilarious to you aren't funny at all to them. You wish the scientists back on Earth had given you a guidebook to this strange planet, but they forgot to pack one. So you have to try to learn things all on your own. Maybe there's one thing in particular that captures your interest and you study just that. Hopefully the people on the planet begin to understand you a bit better. This is such a good analogy, probably one of the best I've heard. I love how it describes autism as if everyone else is the alien, because that is how I can feel sometimes. And I love the bit about wishing you had a guidebook and needing to figure everything out on your own. I love that the entire thing is from the perspective of how weird it is for the autistic person. If I take anything away from the episode, it's going to be this analogy. I also have to give it props for how accessible the episode is. On my last episode, I criticized Luke for only being available behind a paywall. Well, When George Met Carter, on the other hand, is available for free to watch on PBS Kids' YouTube channel. The fact that it's so easy to find and for free makes it better at doing what it was intended to do. Also, the kids in the A Word From Us Kids section were all autistic, which I thought was really neat to see. As for negatives, my only issue with the episode is the stereotypes it sticks to. Like, they could have given him another special interest and avoided the autistic boy who loves trains stereotype. Also, I really could have done without the puzzle pieces in the story, mainly because of the negative associations with it. Overall, I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised by When George Met Carl. Despite sticking to some pretty tired stereotypes, the episode manages to showcase autism in a rather positive way, in my opinion, and it explains autism to children in one of my favorite analogies I've heard. It's definitely got some issues, but if you're looking for autism representations, I think it's worth a watch. Have you seen this episode of Arthur, or are you planning on seeing it? What do you think of it? Do you agree or disagree with what I said? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.